Welcome to the podcast. My name is Father Bill W. I'm an Episcopal priest living here in Austin, Texas, and I've had the gift of recovery since December the 27th of 1972. Just a reminder to me to thank you guys for your contributions to keep this thing going. It is truly appreciated. And if you haven't signed up for the newsletter, please do that now. You can go to the website and just sign up for the newsletter. So, business out of the way, let's get going. The subject for this episode and for the next one, it's going to be a two-parter, is going to be on obedience. I've got some things lined up for the next few months, and I had 2 weeks here with a blank spot, and I kind of went to my bookcase, and something jumped out at me, and it was this book by Thomas R. Kelly. I've mentioned it before. It's a wonderful book to use during your morning quiet time. Kelly was a mystic, was a Quaker, a teacher. He really speaks to me. This is a series of like 5 different articles that he wrote later in life, shortly before he died, and he died a fairly young man. But this one is on obedience, holy obedience, Don't let that scare you guys off, all right? But before we dive into Kelly, I kind of want to set the scene a little bit. I always ask myself the question, what does whatever I'm going to discuss have to do with people who are in 12-step recovery? And I think the subject of obedience has a lot to do with us because it's something we really need to pay very close attention to. We're probably more familiar with its opposite, which is defiance. I looked up a couple of quotes from Wilson in the 12 and 12. He says, defiance is an outstanding characteristic of alcoholics. It was page 5. Page 11, belief meant reliance, not defiance. And 31, when we encountered AA, the fallacy of our defiance was revealed. So I think the two are kind of closely associated. I got diagnosed defiant at about the age 6 or so, and it had been present for a long while before then. But it was kind of the innate stance that I took, I was much more prone to say no than I was yes. I don't know if you can relate to that, but anyway, it kind of rings true for me. When I started thinking about this obedience business, the steps that came to my mind very quickly were 3 and 11. In 3, we make a decision to turn our lives and our wills over to the care of God. And in doing that, theoretically at least, we are entering into a new relationship, right? God is the principal. God is the director. We're the actors. He's the principals. We're the agents. He's the father or mother. And we're the children. We have a new employer, and that employer gets to call the shots. So relationships, am I being obedient to that new relationship, or am I just giving lip service to it? I think that's really the question. And then in 11, it really brings that whole relationship to life, because this is where we turn to God for guidance and for direction. How? Through prayer and meditation. And for me, especially through two-way prayer. To me, that was the lost element. I was 20 years sober when I kind of stumbled onto that thing. And it was like, whoo, nobody ever taught me about this in my recovery. It really comes down to, are we asking for guidance? Are we listening for the answers that come? Are we writing it all down? And then, and this is the big one, are we being obedient in carrying through on whatever guidance it is that we receive? The big book talks about living a life now based on insight and inspiration. This is when it talks about step 11, receiving guidance, even though, quote, being new at it, we may do some absurd things, but in time, we come to rely on it. That's interesting about obedience. It may be done in the beginning for maybe less than honorable intentions, or certainly, let's say, less than intimate intentions. But in the end, we come to rely on it because we're coming to rely, in a sense, on a friend and having had the experience of it. You got to get that experience thing down, right? So that's the background. That's where I'm coming from. Let's start getting down to Kelly now. And his first point is that God isn't, some distant being sitting up there in heaven and waiting for us to be obedient by kneeling at his feet and worshiping him. That's not who God is. And if you're struggling with that concept, go listen to the episodes we did on John Caputo, What to Believe, did it about 2 months ago. That book was really, really helpful for me. So maybe it will be for you too. All right. So obedience. Kelly says, God needs us, and he's really the one who's searching for us. And he's doing that a whole lot more than we may be searching for God. God is not the one who's lost. I'm the one who's lost. And God is, in a sense, in the deepest recesses of my mind, God is coming after me. Now, I don't know if you were ever exposed to The Hound of Heaven. I was in high school, and it made a pretty profound impression on me. And I didn't know it then, but it was written about 100 years ago by an English opium addict by the name of Francis Thompson. Here's just a few lines from the opening verses. I fled him down the nights and down the days. I fled him down the arches of the years. I fled him down the labyrinthine ways of my own mind. And in the midst of tears, I hid from him. But then the addict in Thompson, hears the sounds of footsteps coming after him, a voice that's searching for him, calling to him. And the poem says, he was like the hound of heaven, a bloodhound, searching after me. We think we go searching after God and it's a big problem. No, just stop long enough and get silent enough to allow the voice, the presence, the divine that is within each and every one of us to come to the surface, to come into our minds, and then to come into our lives. So Kelly starts his essay off saying this. He says, God is the one seeking after us. God is the initiator. God is even the aggressor. Strong language. The stirrer into life, the ground of our obedience. God is the giver of the power to become children of God. So let me read some of Kelly's essay to just kind of get us going. He says this, starts off with a quote from Meister Eckhart. Eckhart wrote, there are plenty to follow our Lord halfway, but not the other half. They will give up possessions, friends, and honors, but it touches them too closely to disown themselves. The ego, can you hear it screaming, That's a quote, I think, from 12 and 12, but boy, it really rang true for me. What is all this letting go stuff, giving up stuff that I was facing when I came into the program? What the hell's going to become of me? Because me, ego sense, is the only me I knew. But there's another me that's laying deeper inside of me that is the true me, the real me. And that's the voice that comes through in two-way prayer. Am I listening to God? Am I listening to myself? I'm listening to my true self. And my true self, that's where God resides. Okay? And Kelly grasps that at a very deep level and helps us understand it. He puts it in language that kind of breaks through to our souls. The best way I can kind of put it. So Kelly goes on and says this. He says, it is just this astonishing life which is willing to follow him, the other half, sincerely to disown itself. This life which intends complete obedience without any reservations, that I would propose to you in all humility, in all boldness, in all seriousness. I mean this literally, utterly, completely, and I mean it for you and for me. Commit your lives in an unreserved obedience to him. We talk in 12-step about half measures availing us nothing. Well, if you've been around for a while, you know that's not exactly true. We can stay dry for many, many years on half measures. But somewhere in our souls, that hound keeps us restless, irritable, discontent. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just a sign that we're not fully surrendered, we're not fully aligned, we're not fully obedient. We're gonna do a thing on key coming up in a couple of weeks. The question is, who does the Grail serve? It serves the Grail King is the answer. who do I serve? Am I trying to get God to be in service to me? Or am I doing a 180 and trying to be of service to the God within? And that means to the honesty, the purity, the unselfishness, the love within. It's in you and it's in me. We got to connect with this thing, find out what it is, and then begin to be obedient to it, to allow it to run my life, right? I had a sponsor many years ago, and he said most people in AA and most people in the church are living, his phrase was a limited conversion. They're not drinking, they're better than they were, but they're far from living a life of close relationship, intimacy, and obedience. Kelly goes on, if you don't realize the revolutionary explosiveness of this proposal, you don't understand what I mean. Only now and then comes a man or a woman like Francis of Assisi who's willing to be utterly obedient, to go the other half, to follow God's faintest whisper. But when such commitment comes in a human life, God breaks through, miracles are wrought, world-renewing divine forces are released, history changes. There's nothing more important than to have the human race endowed with just such committed lives. To this extraordinary life, I call you, or he calls you through me, not as a lovely ideal, a charming pattern to aim at hopefully, but as a serious, concrete program of life to be lived here and now by you and by me. I don't know if there's a better description of what the 12 steps are aiming for than that, because that's what the Oxford group was aiming for. It said the only way this world is going to change is by certain number of people getting it, all right, understanding it, and then living it. And then when people see those kinds of people around, something happens inside of us, and we become changed as they became changed. You catch it. You catch recovery. You catch it from the people you see it in. And you have to see enough of those people, or at least a few of those people, because they're going to be few and far between. But you see them and you say, I want what that guy has. I want it. My soul wants it. And then you're really getting in touch with what this whole recovery movement is all about. It's about a hell of a lot more than just not drinking. I met some of those people in my life. I met some in the church, and I met some in the program. And they spoke to me, not in words, but through their lives. That took off in me. I want that. It's possible. Maybe it's a long shot, but it's possible, And then you begin the journey, all right? Kelly says this is something wholly different from mild, conventional religion. Our churches are full of respectable and amiable people. We have plenty to follow God the first half of the way. In some ways, William James says religion exists as a dull habit, in others an acute fever. Which is it? Which is it in them? More importantly, which is it in me? Am I on fire with this stuff? Do I catch a vision of it? And am I moving towards that in my life? That's what keeps recovery fresh. Not drinking, it's lovely. I'm all for it, okay? But like Bill Wilson said, AA is a spiritual kindergarten. And if you want to spend the rest of your life in kindergarten, so be it. You can do it. I think you can even stay sober in kindergarten. Some of us didn't, but it's possible. And a lot of us, we kind of get that, we call it the pink cloud in recovery. You're on fire, it's new, it's exciting. But then after a while, it starts to burn off and you drift away and the flame goes out. That's what happened to me at 20 years. And I talk to a lot of people. It happens to them at 10, 8. You never know when it's going to go out. But the fire is gone. And that is what Kelly's after here. How do you reignite that fire? How do you get that flowing in your soul? Because that's what genuine recovery is about. He writes, the life that intends to be wholly, wholly, wholly obedient, wholly, completely submissive, holy listening is astonishing in its completeness. Its joys are ravishing, its peace profound, its humility the deepest, its power world-shaking, its love enveloping, its simplicity that of a trusting child. It is the life and power in which the prophets and apostles lived. I think it's the life that the pioneers in AA lived, too. It's those early stages when, my God, I was this way 2 weeks ago, and now I'm a new person, different, changed. It's the life and the power of Jesus, who knew that when the eye is single, the whole body is full of light. It's the life and power of St. Francis, that poor little man of God who came nearer to reliving the life of Jesus as has any other man on earth. It is the life and power of myriads of unknown saints through the ages. It is the life and power of some people now in this room who smile knowingly as I speak. And I'm sure there's some guys out there and gals out there who you know exactly what I'm talking about. It's when that ego is right-sized and in its right place, and the divine is able to come through. And he's writing to church people, but we're talking to 12-step people, and it's the exact same thing, you know? So next, Kelly says, what are some of the gateways, entryways into this holy obedience? And much like Wilson first wrote in step 12, he says it's having an experience, or at least a taste of the divine. And this is the difference between a mystic and a believer. The mystic knows because he has had the experience. Jung was famously asked in a BBC interview, "Doctor, do you believe in God?" "Believes?" the old man said. "No, I do not believe. I know. How did he know? He knew through his experience. And that was why Wilson wanted to change the 12-step back to experience. And that's why Father Ed Dowling, another podcast we did a few weeks back, wept when he heard that we changed it to an awakening. Wilson said, a more tepid form. You know, boy, this stuff has got to be impactful, powerful, break through that ego film that's around us, encasing our lives, you know? Got to break through that sucker. In another essay, and this is one of my favorite quotes, and it's not in this particular one, it's in another one that's in this book. But he's describing there the center. What is this other place? What is this great reality within, as the big book calls it? Kelly writes, deep within us all, there is an amazing inner sanctuary of the soul, a holy place, a divine center, a speaking voice to which we may continuously return. Eternity is at our hearts, pressing upon our time-torn lives, warming us with intimations of an astonishing destiny, calling us home unto itself, yielding to these persuasions, gladly committing ourselves in body and soul, utterly and completely to the light within, is the beginning of true life. Recovery, you gotta stop drinking, you gotta stop drugging. Francis Thompson had to put that morphine down and begin to listen and change. And he did. And it's happened throughout history. AA and NA and CA, they're just a wonderful way of putting it into a series of steps that people can follow to do what? To get to 12, where you've had this spiritual experience, this spiritual awakening, as they softened it to. Not that I'm against it. I'm not out to change it. It's not going to happen. I needed to understand it, that this was the encounter with the divine. And we're going to go a little bit deeper into that now. Kelly writes that entry into this world starts with a vision. And these visions are more common, I think, than sometimes we believe. He says it can come to us through the biographies of the saints. You catch it, just like you catch, a virus or something. Catch it from someone. Someone inspires you. You read this and you say, I want that. I want what this person has. I mean, they wrote a section of the book. It was important enough to do that, called A Vision for You. We got to take these drunks and hold up to them some sort of a vision so they can see it and catch it and what? Move towards it. Move towards it. And if you're doing two-way prayer with that, you're going to find a voice inside that's going to help guide you as you move towards that. Second step, Kelly writes, is once you've caught the vision, begin where you are. He writes, obey now. Use what little obedience you're capable of, even if it be like a grain of mustard seed. Begin where you are. Live this present moment, this present hour, as you now sit in your seats in utter submission and openness towards God. Thy will be done. Every moment behind the scenes be a prayer, offering yourselves in continuous obedience. I find, he's speaking here, I find this internal, continuous prayer life absolutely essential. Pray constantly is the expression. Why do you do that? Well, you do it by living a life that's connected and obedient. And the two go hand in hand, right? Kelly says it can be carried on day and night in the thick of business, in home and school. Such prayer of submission can be so simple. It is well to use the single sentence repeated over and over and over again. What would it be in program language? Your will, not mine, be done. Prayer of St. Francis, Wilson taps into that one in step 11 in the 12 and 12. St. Francis prayer. Make me a channel of your peace. Where there's hatred, let me bring love. Inside as well as outside, where I find hatred in myself, bring love, bring love. Where there's discord, harmony. We're going to find those shadow parts in ourselves. They're all over the place. They have an opposite. All right. And by being obedient in my prayer life and in bringing my prayer life to make it real, all right, not just some holy stuff, that's where this change is going to happen. The third step, Kelly writes, is this. He says, if you slip and stumble and forget God for an hour and assert your old proud self and rely upon your own clever wisdom, don't spend too much time in anguished regrets and self-accusations, but begin again just where you are. Get up and go again. Same is true for relapsing, on the drugs, on the alcohol. A lot of people, and I'm one of them, I didn't get it right away. I relapsed, but I didn't get up and get right back in on the horse, so to speak. I went underground for a year and a half, hiding, shameful. Don't do that. Don't do that. Some of the eating disorder folks, the sexual disorder folks, some of them they're so close to the illness at all times. They're going to relapse in a sense. They're going to drift closer to the addiction. In alcohol and drug use, it can be very catastrophic. And people sometimes have a harder time being gentle with themselves, being understanding of themselves, being patient with themselves. All right? Give it a try. Kelly's fourth and final recommendation when it comes to obedience sounds a lot like let go and let God. He writes, don't grit your teeth and clench your fists and say, I will, I will. Relax, take hands off, submit yourselves to God. Learn to live in the passive voice and let life be lived through you. For I will spells not obedience. I will reeks of ego and egotism, right? Your will and your strength, praying only for the knowledge of his will and the power. Don't forget the power, to carry it out. Don't tell me your will, God, and I'll go do it. And no. What is your will? And give me the power to do it, because I don't have it. I don't have it. We all know that, the willpower wasn't very effective when it came to not drinking, not drugging. But there's an expression my first sponsor used that I've never forgotten. He said, the purpose of the will is to be willing. The purpose of the will. It's not to bombard my problems with it. The purpose of the will is to be willing. Willingness, not willpower, is the key. Willingness and living hour by hour and even moment by moment, pulling ourselves back into God's will. That's what Kelly calls holy obedience. All right? It's a link, it's a connection, and it comes largely through prayer and meditation. Kelly's got more to say on this. It's only by about 10 pages, I think, a little essay. We'll pick it up next episode. But meanwhile, kind of begin where you are and get started or restarted today. And when you do your morning quiet time, take a few moments and look at the day ahead. Ask if there are some things that the inner voice, the inner guide, the inner God, the great reality might be asking for you to do this day. Right? Write them down. And then if they pass the test, are they honest, pure, unselfish, loving? Then go ahead and do them, and then be obedient in the doing of them. This obedience thing, it's not a natural state of being for me, but it feels like the right use of the will. And it gets me into a whole lot less trouble than my defiance does. So this is a whole new way of life. I'm 53 years sober and I feel like a beginner. And I think that's a good place to be. So pick this up next time. Hope it's helpful to you guys. And if it is, drop me a line, twowayprayer@gmail.com. Love to hear from you. God bless and keep coming back. If I could ask a favor now, please help us spread the word about two-way prayer. Your donations, whether large or small, really help keep the lights on here, and you can now find us on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. Giving a thumbs up and subscribing help us reach more people, and sharing this content with friends might actually help make a real difference in their recovery. Finally, the description below links you to our two-way prayer website and to our new book, The Power of Two-Way Prayer. So once again, thank you for listening. God bless, and keep coming back.